Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to talk about the 44 rules to play D&D, which recently blew up on Twitter. And we're going to talk about XP to level 3 and how he 100% bobbled the ball in commenting on this. And how D&D commentary has a moral standard, and we need to meet it. And when another D&D commentator is failing to meet a moral standard, I think we in the D&D commentator community need to reach out to that person and say, hey, you need to stop this, right? So I'm going to come at XP to level 3's comments, right? And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you how what he's doing, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate, right? And it's inappropriate. Okay, you could use other terms, but it's inappropriate. And I want to set this as a standard for D&D commentary going forward. Okay, and because I'm very aware of the problem, and I have a good solution, and what XP to level 3 is doing is wrong, fundamentally wrong, and really needs to be fixed. And so this is my request to XP to level 3. XP to level 3 to stop what he's doing, and a request to the entire D&D community to stop this. Now, I do want to say this real quick. XP to level 3 is not the only person who's guilty of this. Many people are guilty of this, and in the D&D commentary community, and we need to stop this. So it's not just him, but the reason we're talking right now is this just happened. I went and watched his content to learn about the 44 rules to play D&D, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I have the receipts to talk about this issue. Let's talk about it. Okay, so if you watch his video, right, there's a point where he reads one of the rules and he says, that's insane. That's insane, right? Now, what is he doing there? In my humble opinion, he is diagnosing the DM who wrote the 44 rules of D&D. 44 rules for playing D&D. What are the 44 rules for playing D&D? It was a distraught dungeon master who created an open letter to his players, and then one of those players took it public, and then it blew up on Twitter. That's what it is, okay? So this was a dungeon master who was under a ton of pressure. He had terrible players, and so he tried to fix it by crafting this 44 rules for playing D&D, and then it super blew up on Twitter. And then right here on YouTube, Professor Dungeon Master covered it. Professor Dungeon Master covered it. Bob World Builder covered it, and XP to level 3 covered it. Okay. Now this is where it gets interesting. So XP to level 3 says that's insane. Now this is interesting. You're like, and I'm like, wait a second. That's a medical diagnosis, right? You're saying that when he wrote this section, he was displaying attributes of insanity, right? You're questioning his mental health. Okay, you're questioning his mental health. Let's dig into that. Do you have a right to do that? The answer is no, right? Not under any circumstance, right? And so let's determine why XP to level 3 had absolutely no right to diagnose this distraught dungeon master, right? Who was under pressure and was distraught, right? Like I am saying he was distraught. You could tell, reading his stuff. Oh my gosh, I'm really distraught from what's happening. Distraught is a temporary circumstance that can happen. Insanity is like a generational, insanity. First of all, what is insanity? If you hear this term, you're really dealing with somebody who uses incredibly repugnant, antiquated language to refer to mental health. No one who actually cares in any way or knows anything about mental health would ever use this word in a sentence, unless they were trying to stop others from using the word in a sentence. And I'm hoping that within a year, the word insanity, the word delusion, all these medical diagnoses will disappear from Dungeons & Dragons commentary, okay? And you're like, well, Scott, I don't know if he was really trying to psychoanalyze him. He was definitely trying to psychoanalyze him, because in the video he says, I'm trying to psychoanalyze this person. XP to level 3 has no credentials to psychoanalyze anyone, right? So he is 100% wrong. And this is why we're talking about this right now. We have the receipts. He just did it. It's right there. It's up on his channel, right? And he's saying, "Hey, everyone, I went over and I read this person's rules on Dungeons and Dragons, and I would like to have a very robust conversation about their mental health and let you know that I think they're insane, right? But also, I would also like you to know that while I would like to discuss this person's mental health, I personally use outrageously repugnant, antiquated language about mental health and are communicating to you with the very words I'm using that I don't know anything about mental health and I haven't read anything on it or care about it in any way," right? Like, it's really repugnant what he's doing. It's super wrong, super wrong. And you're like, wait a second, Scott, wait a second. Did you do the math? Did you do the math to determine that he does not have any credentials to psychoanalyze? I don't have to. You know why? Because anyone with any credentials in mental health does not diagnose based on seeing somebody online, seeing third-hand content from a person spread across 3 different social medias online. No credentialed mental health expert would ever diagnose based on those methods, right? So he can't be a credentialed mental health expert because he would never do what he was doing. And no credentialed mental health expert would ever use the term insanity, right? Like, they would use much more kind, tolerant terminology. And they would not talk about somebody in this way. They would never say, "Oh, hey, you sent an open letter to your dungeon master crew, and now I'm going to tell the world that I think you and probably your descendants suffered from insanity." It's repugnant. It is horribly wrong, and it has to stop 100% immediately. Okay? So going forward, if you are part of the Dungeons & Dragons D&D commentary community, do not ever diagnose anyone for any mental health condition that you think they have, right? Here's why. 1, you don't have the right. You don't have the right to do it, okay? 2, you probably don't have the credentials. 3, if you do have the credentials, you know enough to know that nothing said online is an indicator of any mental health conditions. And the reason why is everyone who has actually studied mental health knows the following, right? If you see something outlandish, if you see something apples, bananas said online by someone, you might reach, right, the conclusion that person has mental health issues. You would never then say it publicly. You would reach out to that person and say, "Hey, here's the way to contact me. Let's have a discussion pro bono about your mental health, and I will see if I can help you," right? That would be the proper way. No one, and also anybody who is studying mental health today is studying how the effects of social media on mental health, and also knows that if you see something outlandish or apples, bananas online, it's highly likely that person did that for clicks or for attention. So it's clickbaiting. It's not a mental health. It is not evidence of any type of mental health condition, right? So I'm coming at XP level 3 on this one thing. I think he's a smart person. I think he's a moral person. I think he's a good person. And I think the only reason he did this was ignorance. I think he's ignorant of mental health issues today, right? I do think he owes this gentleman, the person who created these 44 rules of D&D, an apology. I don't think it's the end of the world if he doesn't apologize, but I do think he owes an apology. And XP to level 3 needs to stop doing this immediately, and not just him. If you are a Dungeons & Dragons commentary community member, you have absolutely zero right to diagnose anyone's mental health conditions. Period. In my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. Please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.